What is going on, guys? It wouldn't be the NFL without a series of unpleasant surprises and some utter disappointments. Several players, teams, and games simply haven't lived up to the expectations. Several players, teams, and games simply haven't lived up to expectations through the first half of the 2020 season. Anything can happen in the second half. Maybe the players and teams who've underachieved the most will figure it out and turn things around. But so far, these are the 10 biggest disappointments of the 2020 NFL season. Number 10, Baltimore Ravens vs. Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football. When the NFL put out its 2020 schedule, many of you circled this game on your calendar for obvious reasons. The matchup pitted arguably the top two players in all of football against one another. The two most recent MVP winners, two Super Bowl winning head coaches, the top two teams in the AFC, and on Monday Night Football. This was supposed to be one of the best matchups in recent memory. But it didn't turn out that way, unless you're a Chiefs fan, of course. The Ravens were no match for Kansas City on this night. Mahomes had another field day against Don Martindale's defense, throwing for 385 yards and 4 touchdowns. He wasn't sacked once, and the Ravens forced 0 turnovers on the night. As for Jackson, he was nowhere close to keeping up with Mahomes. He completed only 15 passes for 97 yards and 1 touchdown. He also took 4 sacks and lost a fumble. The Chiefs cruised to a 34-20 victory, making Mahomes 3-0 against Jackson. I mean, we waited 4 months for that showdown, and it wound up being nothing more than a lopsided blowout. The game was never really exciting at any point. Number 9, fantasy football's top 3 picks. In countless standard fantasy football leagues, running backs Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, and Ezekiel Elliott were the consensus top 3 picks. These 3 men were by far the most dominant running backs in the NFL heading into the 2020 season after all. But unfortunately, football fans didn't really get to see more dominance from Barkley and CMC. The New York Giants superstar suffered a season-ending ACL tear in Week 2 against the Chicago Bears. Meanwhile, McCaffrey suffered an ankle injury in the Carolina Panthers' Week 2 road loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we missed plenty of highlight runs from the 4th-year running back. What a shame, because Matt Rule's offense has been such a treat to watch. Imagine how much better it'd be with McCaffrey on the field. Meanwhile, there's been no injuries for Ezekiel Elliott, just some lackluster play from the 2-time rushing champion. Injuries and poor play on the Dallas Cowboys offensive line hasn't helped, but that's no excuse for his constant fumbling woes. Barkley and McCaffrey can obviously blame injuries for their struggles, but in Zeke's case, few players have been bigger disappointments than him this season. Number 8, Nick Foles. The Chicago Bears received plenty of criticism when they acquired Super Bowl 52 MVP Nick Foles via trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Many expected them to find a more suitable starting caliber QB, like Cam Newton, Andy Dalton, or Jameis Winston to push Mitch Trubisky. I mean, it was a make-or-break year for him. Foles came into a rather familiar offense. He had a working history with head coach Matt Nagy, quarterbacks coach John DeFilippo, and offensive coordinator Bill Lazor, so there was reason to believe that he'd play at a high level in the Windy City. And for a short period, he did. Foles replaced a struggling Trubisky in the Bears' Week 3 road game against the Atlanta Falcons, leading them to an epic come-from-behind victory in the 4th quarter. After struggling in a Week 4 home loss to the Indianapolis Colts, Foles bounced back by guiding Chicago to a thrilling Thursday Night Football win over Tom Brady's Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It looked like Foles had regained that magic we previously saw in Philadelphia, but Foles was merely average in Chicago's Week 6 road win against Carolina, and he was awful in their Week 7 Monday night road loss to the Los Angeles Rams. He's basically been worse than Trubisky, but the Bears' elite defense has done just enough to help them win games. Wasn't Foles brought in to be an upgrade from Trubisky? If he could just be average, Chicago would be a legitimate Super Bowl contender. But the play of both these quarterbacks has caused everyone to view the Bears as more of a pretender than a legitimate contender. Number 7, Seattle Seahawks Defense. Russell Wilson has grown into an MVP caliber quarterback since the end of the Legion of Boom era in Seattle. But the downside is that the Seahawks defense has been mediocre to terrible ever since. Yeah, the Seahawks are among the NFC's elite teams in 2020, but they can't be considered a serious threat to win it all if the defense doesn't play at a respectable level. And given all the offensive makeovers they made, it's hard to understand how this unit is still underachieving so badly. The Seahawks traded for former Washington standout Quinton Dunbar, who had strong numbers from Pro Football Focus in 2019. They also drafted Texas Tech linebacker Jordan Brooks with the number 27 selection. And during the offseason, GM John Snyder traded for the New York Jets All-Pro safety Jamal Adams. Add it all up, and that's 3 more studs to complement future Hall of Famer Bobby Wagner and standout corner Shaq Griffin. But somehow the Seahawks defense is actually worse than it's ever been in the Pete Carroll era. They're near the very bottom in total yards allowed and scoring defense. How can they still be this bad? Seattle fans may not be too worried about it at the moment, since Wilson and the offense have been masking their defensive woes. But this problem will be exposed in January, if it hasn't been fixed by then. Number 6, Marquise Brown. We totally expect a breakout season for the second-year wide receiver, and for many reasons. 1, he still has reigning MVP Lamar Jackson throwing the ball to him. 2, you'd think the added experience and growth would make Brown better after an inconsistent rookie year. 3, his health, as Brown was hampered by ankle and hip injuries in 2019. And 4. Brown added to his physique by tacking on 23 pounds in the offseason. Added up, and it equaled what should have been a breakout year for the 2019 first-round pick. But as Brown's fantasy football owners have learned, the man hasn't come close to making the second-year leap. Granted, the Baltimore offense in general has taken a step back. Jackson isn't even in the MVP conversation, and the Ravens are being carried more by their lights-out defense these days. If the Ravens go on a deeper playoff run, then who cares about Brown's production? But us fantasy football managers can't be blamed for our disappointment in Hollywood Brown. His lack of a breakout season brought us to this point. Number 5, Houston Texans. It was easy to write off the Houston Texans entering the 2020 season, following that cringeworthy DeAndre Hopkins trade. But we couldn't buy into it. We just assumed Deshaun Watson would work his magic again, mask the many flaws on the team, and guide Houston back to the playoffs. But everything came crashing down quickly, which led to the firing of Bill O'Brien following an 0-4 start. The usually explosive passing game has been hit or miss without D-Hop. Watson is playing behind quite literally one of the worst offensive lines of all time. He's getting no support from the ground game, and that defense is hard to watch, to the point where J.J. Watt has found himself in trade rumors. Even those who picked Houston to miss the playoffs couldn't have expected them to be this bad. They'll be lucky to win 5 games at this point. With all that being said, now is probably a bad time to remind Texans fans that the Miami Dolphins own their first-round pick in 2021, thanks to that Laramie Tunsil-Kenny Stills trade. Number 4, sophomore quarterbacks. The 2019 NFL Draft lacked can't-miss quarterback prospects. Even Kyler Murray, the first overall pick, carried high bust potential. Although after a season and a half, I think it's fair to say that the Cardinals made the right choice. But the next 3 quarterbacks taken, Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins, and Drew Lock, weren't even viewed as first-round talents by countless scouts and analysts. The New York Giants reached for Jones at number 6 overall. Washington was desperate for a QB, so they took Haskins with the number 15 selection. And the Broncos took Lock with the 42nd pick in round 2. Murray was undoubtedly the best rookie QB in 2019. The second best? It turned out to be Gardner Minshew, the 6th round 178th pick by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well, Murray has followed up his phenomenal rookie season with an MVP-like sophomore year, but Jones has been downright awful. Haskins started 4 games before being shown the bench, and even Minshew is looking like a one-year wonder. As for Locke, he missed 2 games with a shoulder injury, but even when he's been on the field, he hasn't given Broncos fans a whole lot to get excited about. If it weren't for Murray, we'd already deem this to be one of the absolute worst quarterback draft classes of all time. Number 3, New England Patriots. Most folks expected the Patriots to take a step back in 2019. Franchise icon Tom Brady left for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in free agency. Bill Belichick didn't add any impact veterans prior to signing Cam Newton, and his decision at the draft table raised a lot of eyebrows. But the Pats won 2 of their first 3 games, and Newton looked like the front-runner for comeback player of the year. They nearly pulled off an upset road win in Seattle in week 2, and they could have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs in week 4 if they weren't down to second and third string quarterbacks. But the Pats put up a stinker in a stunning week 5 home loss to the Denver Broncos, despite surrendering 0 touchdowns. Then they got flat out embarrassed at home by the banged-up San Francisco 49ers to fall to 2-4. Newton has regressed. The defense has lost its swagger. Belichick doesn't seem to have any answers for this superstar-deprived team. The Buffalo Bills are a much better football team and the clear frontrunners in the AFC East. Yeah, it looked like the Patriots dynasty has met its demise sooner than we expected following a convincing 2-1 start. Number 2, Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings seem to be the team to beat in the NFC North heading into 2020, at least according to several major media outlets and NFL experts. But Kirk Cousins has played perhaps the worst football of his career. Mike Zimmer's new-look defense, which lost 4 veteran starters from 2019, has regressed horribly. The offseason acquisition of Yannick Ngakoue didn't do enough, so they flipped him to the Baltimore Ravens ahead of the trade deadline. Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, and rookie Justin Jefferson have been among the few positives. But how could a consistent playoff contender suddenly find themselves in contention for their first overall pick? It's an unbelievable fall from grace with few answers. You have to wonder if Cousins, Zimmer, and GM Rick Spielman are all finishing out their final year in Minnesota. Number 1, NFC least. I mean, what else can we say? The Dallas Cowboys were supposed to be done with their underachieving ways. Now that Super Bowl winning head coach Mike McCarthy was brought in to replace Jason Garrett. Nope. The Mike Nolan-led defense is setting all-time records for being horrible. They can't stop a nosebleed. The Philadelphia Eagles are always a contender under Doug Peterson, but Carson Wentz can't do much with a banged-up O-line and a little-known group of pass catchers. The Washington football team is as bad as we expected, and that's okay. They're still in rebuilding mode under Ron Rivera. And lastly, Daniel Jones is holding back the Giants with his poor decision-making and his trip-ups. While Joe Judge looks like another example of why people need to stop hiring Bill Belichick's assistants. It may only take 6 wins to take the NFC East title this season. That's an insult to the other 28 NFL teams and their fans. All 4 NFC East teams should be contending for top 5 picks, not for a division crown. And you're telling me that one of them gets to host a playoff game? Yeah, this division is unquestionably the biggest disappointment of the season thus far. What do you think has been the biggest disappointment of the 2020 NFL season so far? Join me in the comments section below. Make sure to follow myself and TPS on social media. We post great content all the time: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, on everything. Go find us. If you like this video, give it a like. It takes 1 click down below, and subscribe to TPS. We post videos every day. Every day's a new video. Of course, thank you so much for watching. I'm Jason Biondo. I'll see you next time.